Hello everyone, and welcome to Living Hope, our cancer seminar that we're bringing to you today, talking about nutritional options for those dealing with cancer and those concerned about the prevention aspects of cancer. I'd like to turn right now and welcome all the Facebook Live viewers out there. Thank you, and stay tuned at the end of this as we're going to be doing a question and answer session, which we certainly invite you to come in live with your questions. Many of you know me. I have two offices, one here in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, and one in Youngstown, Ohio. I'm a board-certified chiropractor, a medical acupuncturist. I used to work as an EMT, an athletic trainer, and the part of my training that I feel relates to tonight's topic is not only my 12 years in integrative medicine, practicing as a functional medicine doctor, but also I'm a biologist. That was the very first degree I got, and I'll just be referencing some of the untruths that I was told about 20 years ago when I went to school, training in biology. So this seminar tonight actually comes from the background of being a biologist, and I went to a school in Pennsylvania called Penn State University, and I was also minoring in ecology. So a lot of environmental medicine relates to physical medicine, and I'll be bridging some of those gaps of how the environment reacts with your body. So I'll be talking about that in this afternoon's webinar and our seminar entitled Living Hope. Go ahead and, all right, so the purpose of this workshop is for a brighter future. As I mentioned before, those facing cancer, dealing with it, or perhaps look on a more preventative aspect. We're offering health, help, and hope to those afflicted with cancer, and reminding you that even in advanced stages, there is hope. That's something I can say that I always see whenever you look with breast cancer, whenever you look with the different types of blood cancers, gastrointestinal cancers, when you go to the institutions, see your oncologist, even look at campaigns for cancers and awareness. It always focuses around hope. So do not let go of that, not for one moment. Don't lose sight of it. All right, many of you know when you hear the word cancer, you dread hearing the word. It almost feels like a death sentence, and it certainly elicits fear and confusion. The big question, of course, then is what is cancer? As a biologist and someone who does a bunch of medical research and is trained and works with functional medicine, we always try to ask the why question and the what question. So what is cancer? According to the definition from the American Cancer Society, cancer is a group of diseases characterized by uncontrolled cell growth and the spread of abnormal cells. I'm going to go on a little bit there. It's a condition where genes called oncogenes, which are kind of like the gas pedal, accelerating cells to drive and reproduce. And there's a kind of a war against what they call tumor suppressive genes, which are sort of like the brakes. So it's your car going down the road either with the gas pedal fully pressed or the brakes on, controlling the expression of cells. And I would say this, and I'll debunk this and go back in a little bit, but all cancer is genetic. And what I mean by that is it all affects the genome. So if you look at a cell, inside the cell, there's a nucleus. Cancer ultimately creates a malexpression in the genome within the cell. That's different, though, than saying that cancer is hereditary. And cancer, too, is sort of another myth or just a misconception, is that it's just one disease. And even if you think of a certain type of cancer, say gastric cancer, you might think of that as just one disease, and that's not true either. Many times these cells mutate and they become more resilient, and there's actually different types of cells in the cancer tumor itself, and especially those that break away and migrate. We'll also talk about how we address probably 200 to 300 different mutations that are affecting the body at different times when we're looking at cancer. And we're going to visit this later through epigenetics. The exciting, hopeful thing with cancer is there's something that you can do about your genes. So it's not just bum luck or bad luck that you end a set of genes where everyone in the family had cancer. And I'd like to broaden the definition of cancer for just a moment. This is definitely correct, but here's a new model, and from my background of environmental medicine, I would define it this way. The interaction of abnormal cells and its interaction with its natural environment that results in uncontrolled growth. So we're looking at how this body in this environment interacts. So we're kind of making this dynamic, we're making it living, and we're realizing, just like when I was in school, we would study life cycles and we'd study ecology. We're looking at how the organism, in this case the human being, interacts with its environment. So environmental factors. Is it possible to have a toxic chemical in the environment that turns on cancer genes? It certainly is. But the exciting thing and the hopeful thing tonight, I'll be talking about how through specific plant nutrition, you can actually turn genes on and turn genes off. That's the exciting thing we'll be discussing later tonight. I thought this was really important to talk about. This is what I do. Where's my role in this whole equation? I certainly mentioned that I'm interested in this. I have a background that kind of drove me this way. I practice with people and been doing it for 12 years, looking at their health and lifestyle and triggers that cause and create disease. I treat the person living with cancer and work with people trying to reduce the risk of cancer. So let me sort of expand on that thought just so you get it clear as what I do. At this time, there's a lot of things going on regarding cancer that we don't know yet. We certainly really don't know the exact cause of every cancer. We do know that, for instance, some gastric cancers are related to a bacterium called H. pylori. We know that some of the environmental cancers and triggers and pollutants can irritate the body and the DNA and make changes in the cell and cause it that way. But still, there's a lot of unknowns. So I wanted to go to a neat quote I found that I think kind of sums this up and gives you a flavor of where I'm coming from when I look at this topic. There are in fact two things, science and opinion. The former begets knowledge, the latter ignorance. And that was a quote by Hippocrates in 400 BC. And I think many of us have an opinion, what I just said, why, how. If someone has been diagnosed, you go back and you try to trace your steps and look it all over. But I'd like to turn to the science. With a background in biology, with a very inquisitive mind, with running tests constantly on people of genetics, toxicity, blood panels, panels of antioxidants and things that keep us healthy, I would like to look at this. So that helps, I hope, you understand me and where I'm coming from. And I'll just say this too. I say that cancer is a weed and you are the garden. And I try to make your soil as inhospitable to the growth and the spread of the weed. I look at the fertilizer in your garden. I strive to create an anti-cancer lifestyle through diet and nutrition. My goal to transform lives, make your energy stronger, work more productive, and have more joy and hope. I want to educate, empower, and embrace your health as something sacred. My general impression of diet, I recommend organic and plant-based diets as much as possible. Organic food is potent and full of vitamins and minerals. And something that came out that shocked me a while back, but I was glad we could debunk this, was this. The British did a meta-analysis of clinical trials and came out and said that organic food is no better than conventional food. So why spend the money, right? That was my first thought. However, the study was flawed because they only looked at the macronutrients and not the phytonutrients, which are the chemicals that make plants and herbicides interact and actually be so robust the plant thrives and helps your body overcome disease. This is also something to help you better understand me. If I were to sort of sum up one of my sayings, if I can offer help without doing harm, right? The old Hippocratic Oath, we always hear that, first do no harm. So that's the whole concept of using nutrition to help heal your body and looking at environmental factors that might trigger disease process. A couple of terms here, just so we understand. An oncologist is a doctor who studies cancer. Malignancy and benign, that's interesting. Malignant cells are ones with mutations in the genes, and we say that cancer is the malexpression or the inappropriate expression of your DNA, back to that gene connection. And it results from a failure of the immune system. When you hear the term metastasize, that means that the cancer cells have spread and escaped to another area of your body. And when you hear grade of cancer, the grade is looking at how it compares to a normal cell versus a very aggressive cancer cell. And a pathologist is one who studies the disease in the laboratory. They're the person that many times during surgery, they're slicing off samples, taking it back to the laboratory, and immediately within moments giving feedback to the physician and the surgeon to go on or to not, or to give feedback of where this might have spread to. I kind of look at those doctors as cellular detectives, right? They kind of go on the hunt all the time. All right. I like this slide a whole lot. My best friend from high school is a Navy fighter pilot and flew the Hornets. And why I would bring this up right now is the importance of the immune system. If I'm developing a battle plan, what you might say a cancer battle plan, I want every branch of my immune system on my side. I want the Army, Air Force, Navy, Marines, Navy SEALs. I want everyone to come in and help me out. I want my lymph tissue to help me out. I want my thymus to help me out. My spleen, the intestinal bacteria. I want these guys on my side. So I thought it'd be interesting to say this. Cancer is a process that occurs in our body all of the time. They are constantly created in our body. And cancer cells don't always lead to the development of cancer because our immune system finds and destroys them and eliminates these abnormal cells. Another term, cancer stem cells. Something years ago we heard a little bit about. Cancer stem cells, we say they're the germ cells from which new tumors arise. And that's major because these stem cells can go around and create false hope. You ever hear that saying, we got it all? Circulating tumor cells, as I said, are now the cancer cells that we have once we have the primary tumor, but they can mutate and become more resistant. So again, I want defense, I want help. When the defense mechanisms are breached, it's a complex chemical reaction that now looks at the microenvironment of the cell. What's inside the cell, and more important from a biology standpoint, like a person on planet Earth, I want to know what that matrix around the cell is like. Am I dealing in water, sand, air? What is my terrain? I have to know the biological terrain. Because this area produces cytokines that can shove out oxygen, which can be lethal to cancer, that can push out minerals, which stabilizes the chemistry to keep your healthy cells, our fighter guys, the branches of the armed forces, if you will, doing their job. So we now know that this debris around the cell is inflammation. And this is really interesting because this is kind of the new killer. I don't know if you happen to see this. On the cover of Time magazine, this was actually exposed where they said the secret killer, inflammation. So remember, when you're dealing with cancer, don't let that go under your radar. Inflammation. Inflammation from what? Inflammation from stress. Inflammation from foods. Inflammation from your environment. Think whole scope. As a biologist, I have to think ecosystem, right? How we're interacting, where inflammation comes from. So we'll talk a lot about that as we get onward tonight. The other big thing I think with cancer that we want to talk about right now as a basis is what their feed is, right? If these guys attack them, I don't want to feed my enemy. Wouldn't that be a military strategy? If something was attacking my body, I wouldn't run to their side and give them ammunition and give them food. So what do cancer cells feed on? Glucose. diabetics actually are known to do poorly with cancer because they have an immunocompromise because of the issue with sugar. So think of it this way. One of the tests used to diagnose cancer is a PET scan. Why? Because radiated sugar is given because these cancer cells take up the sugar more efficiently than any other cell in its area. It's like a vacuum cleaner, so to speak, sucking it up across the cell membrane. So what happens then is this environment becomes acidic. That's something else to remember too. This sea, if you will, this terrain we're fighting on, we want it to be not acidic, so we want it to be alkaline. And that's a principle we'll talk a lot more about with nutrition and how that's done. So we have tons of fighter cells. We have neutrophils, macrophages, dendritic cells, which is a very neat area right now in research in cancer. T cells, another very neat research area in cancer right now. Those are kind of our guys. So if I would say macrophages, T cells, dendritic cells, B cells, we could actually name who's on our side. All right, and something else I kind of chuckle about sometimes, we get really excited about the next and best, latest cure, and that's wonderful, and there's so many talented people. But remember this, a lot of these studies are done on mice in laboratories who are just isolating, maybe their cells, where they actually put in a mice and watch how it reacts in that body. Helpful, but it's not considering the interaction of the ecosystem and us as people. So I often tease and say, cancer in mice is certainly a really big problem in the United States, right? We're really worried about that. Okay, so let's talk about the three main therapies that you always hear about when it comes to conventional medicine. So how would we treat this and look at cancer in conventional medicine? It's the three big therapies that some people would say cut, burn, and poison, okay? And they're the three principles of cancer therapy that are pretty straightforward. And the goal is this: eliminate as much cancer as possible using surgery, radiation, or chemotherapy, while leaving normal cells unharmed. So these guys, when they drop bombs, when they fire missiles, they try to be specific, right? When my friend was flying the Hornets in the air, he had a certain target to bomb. You would try then to get the cancer cell, but not do collateral damage. But collateral damage happens, unfortunately. Okay? So chemotherapy kills local growth, getting rid of the lump or the bump. But what about metastatic growth? Remember I said before, the circulating tumor cells? What about the guy that got away? What about the guy on the ground that was able to sneak out of there and get away? Where's he going? He travels in your lymph system. He travels in your blood system. That circulating tumor cell now can go somewhere else. And that is what they call a stem cell. These therapies typically are great at getting the daughter cell, how cells bud and grow, but they're not getting the guy that got away. Okay? And we think too there's so many side effects with chemotherapy, something I even call a chemical concussion like chemobrain. So in the wake of the war, there can be further destruction. Okay? So it certainly kills cancer cells, but it also kills and annihilates other healthy cells. All right. The big question then, can cancer be prevented? The whole term you hear now is integrative oncology, right? There's centers out there and the work that we do where we work with oncologists. So we're not treating the cancer, we're treating the body to achieve optimal health or wellness. And that's a big statement. I'll read that again. We're not treating the cancer, we're treating the body to achieve optimal health or homeostasis. When I mentioned you there about 20 years ago, I went to school and trained in biology. I wanted to start this whole passage here with this quote. I found it very interesting. It says, all truth passes through three stages. First, it is ridiculed. Second, it is violently opposed. Third, it is accepted as being self-evident. And that was by Arthur Schopenhauer. And I thought that was really interesting. Something I asked my biology teacher when I went off to school at Penn State, in 1993, I was into working out, lifting weights, exercising. I know now we talk about doing CrossFit, but back then the buzz was plyometrics. So I'd run up the steps of the school, and I'd run the bleachers at the school, and I'd run the path behind the school in the woods, and I'd go do my weights, and I'd go, and I'd jump, and I'd swim, and I'd do all this kind of neat stuff. And I asked my teacher that year in biology class, is it possible that the foods I eat, and the things I take into my body, and how I interact with my environment, is it possible that that would change anything in my genetics so my children would have a brighter future should I have children someday? That was 20 years ago. We now have 2 boys. They're 6 and 8. That was an untruth. We didn't know that back then. I was told, no. The things I did to my body today, eating tuna fish with mercury, drinking tap water, exercising, swimming in a pond near this big gorge behind the Penn State campus, it was probably toxic. Swimming in Lake Erie. I asked that question and there was no. We now know this is different. So let's get to some facts. I mentioned before about hereditary cancers. That makes up 5 to 10% of all cancers. But I made the statement early on, okay, that all cancer is genetic because it affects the genome in the cell that reproduces. So if you feel the fate that you might have if mom had ovarian cancer, grandma had breast cancer, grandpa had prostate cancer, you kind of just feel like you're doomed, like you're next in line, stepped up, and here it goes. So remembering this quote, I'm even now going to turn and honor the conventional side. Avastin was a drug that when it was first brought to the market, the gentleman who brought it to the market said there's something called angiogenesis, where this blood was feeding the cells of the tumor, and we got to stop that. So Avastin was originally opposed. You know what now? It's in use. We now know that chopping off the blood supply to a tumor is a sensible thing. But that whole idea was initially opposed. Just like when I asked the question 20-some years ago, is what I put into my body, how I exercise, how I detoxify, what I expose my body to, does it make any difference to my genes, my body? And the answer was no. All right. I told you before about hashtags, if anyone here was earlier. I don't ever do hashtags. I don't ever post anything. The person who does that is my wife, who does all the Facebooking and things. So I'm going to hashtag this one. If I were to hashtag the defining moment in my 12 years of practicing, if I were to hashtag the moment in 20 years since I left high school and embarked upon a major in biology and a career in the health sciences, it would be this. On the cover of Time magazine, why your DNA isn't your destiny. And I went, wow, that's amazing. Years ago, I had the suspicion, I'm sure I wasn't the only one, that probably the way I treated myself, the water I drank, the foods I ate, probably made some difference to my body, all right? So simply said, your body is affected by sleep, stress, food, and the environment. And as you know, your body can fight cancer. I intentionally paused there. As you know, your body, your immune system can fight cancer. We get malignant clones of cells that the body can fight with a healthy immune system. So if I had to go back into the slide where the fighter jet was there and the big boat was there and the guns and the tank, I would say I want my immune system on my side. That's a hashtag. Just like this is a big hashtag. So let's look at this, okay? Okay. Environmental toxicity. It's certainly out there, and we now know that the world we'd like to live in with clean air and clean water is not that case. There's chemicals in the water, there's xenoestrogens and hormones in the water, there's chemicals in the foodstuffs. We live in a sick environment. All right, so solution, right? Present the problem and now propose a solution. These are steps to get to wellness. And I actually took this from one of our major testing companies called the 5 Rs. And I modified this a little bit. This actually comes from Genova Labs, right off their website. But it was the 5 Rs, which I thought was brilliant. I never had this presented to me in this way. Number 1, remove toxicity. Environmental chemicals, stresses, drugs, heavy metals, molds, bacteria. And there's a blind spot in cancer I want to bring this to your attention. Biological dentistry. Here's what happens. Infections in your teeth can change the voltage around your cell. The voltage around the cell changes the pH, and now this complex interaction of microbes fighting deep in the sockets of your dentition and tooth can actually breach the dental gingival barrier, climb across there, if you will, break it down like a little guy in a coal mine chiseling away, and get in your system and go off and create inflammation. And what I said was also in the cover of Time magazine was that inflammation, right? Wow, inflammation is major. That's one of those potential blind spots is here. You know why? They're quiet. And many times we get x-rays, other dentition, and nothing's there. Maybe a slight abscess, but often not. So I wanted to bring that to your attention. Hook yourself up with somebody who's doing that type of dentistry. All right. Another chemical we know from having babies not too long ago. We know because we might be sitting here today drinking water. BPA, right? It's that plastic chemical. We now know that that is actually one of the triggers under this category of toxicity. All right? Restore cell homeostasis. This is really interesting. We're looking not only now at the cell membrane, kind of like when you're a kid and you dig a moat around a castle at the beach. It's that protective membrane. So think of being a little kid, you're at the beach, and you build this awesome sand castle, and you build a moat around it. That's the cell membrane. That's a fortress. You want to keep things out and let the good come in. So we're talking about membrane inflammation at the cell level. Extremely neat biology, intricate work. And I also want to know about the guts of the cell. And the guts of the cell are the cytoplasm. When I was in the 6th grade, we actually got a cookie to show the cell in biology class. And the cytoplasm, we took the squeezy icing and we gooked it all in there. And for the organelles like the mitochondria and the Golgi apparatus, we took little jelly beans and gummy worms and we made this awesome cell. So think about this. A cell's kind of like a big spherical representation. And the way we represented this in biology class was with a cookie, and we put all kind of stuff in there. So the guts of the cell and the fortress of the cell, we have to change that environment, right? There's a saying, to get well, fix the cell. All right, number 3, restore cellular energy. We got to have energy, and I don't mean energy when you're going through cancer to go run around the block. That'd be great. I mean energy to pump out the junk in the cell and to do cell work. So if we theorize that junk has gotten in our body, disrupted our nucleus, hijacked our DNA, and is making our cells replicate and go over and over again and cause problems, we have to figure out how to change that, okay? So we need energy to pump out the junk. And that currency is called ATP. And there's lots of ways to energize that with nutrition and supplements. Number 4, reestablish alkalinity. Interesting, we talked before how inflammation is acidic. Think of lactic acid in your muscles. Inflammation's acidic. Through diet that can be accomplished. I'll throw this out. Let food be your medicine and medicine be your food. We'll get to that later in the workshop. Number 5. This is my hashtag, right? Restore methylation. All right, okay. This is exciting. I love this stuff. This is 20 years of research for me, and the blessing is I can present this to you today. We have to control neuronal damage when it comes to Alzheimer's and autism. We have to stave off microglial activation in the brain when it comes to cancers that either originate or metastasize to the brain. We worry about glutathione to protect us, but more importantly, homocysteine for cardiovascular disease and other markers of inflammation. We worry about something here called tetrabiopterin. So this cycle is my hashtag. This is what pumps me up. This is what gets me excited. I don't expect you to feel the same way. So you're forgiven. So this is what I do, and let me talk a little bit about this. Dr. Richard Deef talked about the transsulfuration pathways, okay? Through specific supplements, RNA therapy, vitamins and herbs, identifying MTHFR, the gene that modulates folic acid, we are now in the nitty-gritty of the cell. I say like this, almost if someone were a fine watchmaker and they knew how to open up a watch and fix a really nice watch, we're down with surgical precision inside the cell, manipulating through DNA testing and RNA therapy, nutrition, diet, environment at this level to pump out the junk. So we look at markers of homocysteine, we look at markers of ammonia is released down here too. We look at how that interacts, and this is the cycle where there's ammonia, and look at tetrabiopterin, and there's so many mental illnesses that are affected here with serotonin and dopamine, and that's where it happens. All right, you know how in football they call an audible? I just call it an audible. For some of you, earlier you saw me doing this. This time of year, and typically this weekend, I would have been up here fishing. So I just want to remind everyone, take a break. I enjoy the genetics. You go out and enjoy life. This is something I like to do. So enjoy autumn, get out. That helps you de-stress for sure. That was the way I de-stressed. All right, so the old saying, an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. All right, we heard that. Our grandmother said that. An ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. So we're talking now about personalized nutrition, living clean and green. It's the scientific research in the field of nutrigenomics, nutrition plus genetics, okay? So boring, grueling for most, and the fun thing, eating, right? Who doesn't like to eat? So it's the kind of the dawn of a new type of treatment. And I'm very blessed to now talk about this. Living clean and green, all right? Getting out the junk and putting in the good stuff. All right, so let me talk now just in general here. Vitamin D, right? We know that vitamin D actually exhibits a hormone-like activity. Extremely important with its reference to cancer. Just a slide ago, there's genes on there that control vitamin D receptivity. That's exciting news. We're always trying to check our vitamin D and get to the optimal level. Not just normal, but optimal levels. Unfortunately though, in this country, we have the standard American diet known as the SAD diet. Do you know that Asian men and women have significantly less risk of prostate and breast cancer? But when they migrate to Hawaii, in other words, they come to this country and they start eating our foods, they begin to have equivalent rates. And studies show as they stay here year after year, they actually match us in our rates of cancer. So what does that say about the interaction of your genes in regard to what you put in your body? The very question I was inquisitive about some 2 decades ago. Here's a little clinical pearl relevant to nutrition. Do you know your waist should be half your height? Something real easy just to remember. Your waist should be half your height. All right, I'm going to bump up a nice quote that I like. It's appropriate here. Let food be your medicine, and medicine be your food. That's Hippocrates, the father of medicine. And you know that obesity is a risk factor for cancers, especially those hormone-driven cancers, like breast and prostate. So let me show you this next slide. We can all identify with this. There it is, right? And I entitled this slide, Fueling the Fire with Sugar. What do I mean by this? Cancer uses sugar to thrive. Doesn't mean that every now and then you can't have a piece of grandma's pie or you can't go out for an ice cream. But in general, and especially those people dealing with cancer, this is fueling the fire with sugar. There's another fuel for sugar though too, and it's called MSG, glutamate. And we'll talk about that a little bit more. So knowing now that obesity is a risk factor, what are we going to do? Lower insulin. That's extremely important, to lower insulin and consume a low glycemic food. And what I mean by that, if you sit down for a Thanksgiving meal and you have gravy and mashed potatoes and cranberry and pie and ice cream and a soda, that glycemic load creates an incredible stress to your body and really fuels that fire. Do you know that sugary drinks that I just mentioned are extremely rich in high fructose corn syrup, which is the single most effective way to get your blood sugar going way too high? And you know one of the best ways to address what they call insulin resistance and get this down? Intermittent fasting. You know how many times on diets, for those dealing with cancer, we do intermittent fasting, where we cleanse and use water. Intermittent fasting has been shown to do some really neat things to the architecture of the cell and an organelle called the mitochondria. And this is something interesting. Being here from Pittsburgh, do you know that Dr. Joseph Maroon looked at a restricted ketogenic diet for his patients with brain tumors, malignant brain tumors? Because the ketones are what the body uses in the absence of glucose. So foods to eat. I thought this was kind of funny. We used to say, you are what you eat, and don't eliminate. All right. Here's the whole purpose. If I can inspire someone today, if somebody watching can be inspired, this is why I'm standing here. The doctor of the future will give no medicine, but will interest his patients in the cause and prevention of disease in the care of the human frame. While I correctly stated before, we don't know the causes of cancer. But as biotech industry and science reveals more and more, we're learning. But if we can go in this mode, or at least do things to help our bodies to get well, even in the face of cancer, that's why I'm here today. Okay? And I also thought a neat quote that would be appropriate here. It was Hippocrates again, but I loved it so much I had to throw it in. A wise man should consider that health is one of the greatest human blessings. A wise man should consider that health is one of the greatest human blessings. And a patient long, long time ago told me that a man spends most of his time accumulating wealth, sacrificing his health, but then when he has wealth, he realizes he's lost his health. So looking back, what's it all for? So what can we do? All right. Perhaps one of the universal cancer treatments that we see everywhere anymore, and that's ground up turmeric in there. My kid actually told me this morning that he thought that was the cast litter pan. So that is not. That is actually a ground up turmeric in there. But perhaps it's notable because new studies suggest its potency for GI cancers, biliary tract cancers, and knowing that it interacts with over 100 genes is major. So this Indian spice, turmeric, right, curcumin, do you know that during the spice trade, it was actually nicknamed golden spice because it cost more than gold at that time? This spice cost more than gold back in the day. And we add phospholipids to this and biopairing, which is black pepper, to make that even more potent. And that's thanks to more and more research coming out. All right. Don't be mycophobic. The other big one too is mushrooms, right? Shiitake, reishi, and maitake mushrooms, they're shown to have significant effect on GI carcinomas. They possess immune-enhancing activity specifically alpha and beta glucans from medicinal mushrooms. Something else I often tell people to do is start your day with green tea. It has something in it called ECGC and catechins, and they are major warriors in your battle for cancer. So consider curcumin on your side. Consider green tea on your side, right? Consider mushrooms to be on your side when you're building your army to fight. What else? We know cruciferous vegetables. Do you know that cruciferous actually means cross? That was pretty neat. Cruciferous actually means cross. They're a source of indole-3-carbinol and sulforaphane that are very helpful for those fighting estrogen-based cancers. Really important. That's one of those things you can't have too much of those. And antioxidants like resveratrol, and from pigmented fruits like blueberries, red raspberries, which it contains something called ellagic acid. And all of these things like ellagic acid and resveratrol and mushrooms and curcumin and bioperine, they're available in pill form, liquid form. So many times people going through especially gastric cancers or the nausea and the discomfort associated with cancer therapy, they're not able to do the foods themselves, maybe they don't have the appetite for that, but we have them in pill form now. So nature has an abundance of healthy foods for us. All right. Some other things I do when it comes to rejuvenating your body for energy when you're dealing with cancer is looking at coconut oil. It's an awesome power fuel as it has something called medium chain triglycerides. It helps to fight funguses, and we always try to take that toxic burden off the cancer patient. Get rid of funguses, molds, bacteria, viruses, and that's great. Plus it gives you energy and won't feed the cancer because it won't feed on it. A lot of times too we use bone broth. Why? Think of this. There's many factors in bone broth to help your body regenerate because it comes from bone marrow. And when we're looking at B cells, and I mentioned before dendritic cells and T cells, and these different types of fighter cells, NK cells, natural killer cells that actually fight cancer, I want that guy on my side. Okay, fruits to consider, apples and apricots, and even consider the seeds. And when you're looking at fruits too, consider the high ORAC value. It's a measure of the antioxidant, kind of the potency punch that you're going to get from those. So the vegetables and fruits, especially those with the high ORAC value. All right, this is so essential, but I'm going to say it. Clean water. I know this sounds strange, but when I asked that question 20 years ago about the water I drink, water has chlorine in it. Why is chlorine in the swimming pool? Kills bacteria. If I drink it, will it kill my precious microbiome of gut bacteria? Sure could. If I'm worried about fluoride in it, displacing the all-important mineral iodine, for so many related cancers, we must look at the connection of iodine. That tap water will actually displace that because it's in the same chemical family, going back to good old chemistry, on the periodic table of elements, and it can bump that out and actually cause issues. So I hope this goes without saying, but clean water. Here's another really kind of a hot topic thing, and I think I'll just have a drink of clean water before we go on, but think about this. Essential oils. Aromatherapy. It kind of became the real big buzz. I've been practicing, as I said, now for 12 years. I worked as an EMT for 6. I was an active trainer for about 4. So I've been in the healthcare treating field for a couple of decades now. And we use essential oils at the house. But all of a sudden, this is great. In the past couple of years, essential oils are all of a sudden everywhere. Everyone's talking about them, distributing, which is a blessing. Frankincense. All right. The definition of essential oils: a volatile organic compound that contain chemicals like terpenes, ketones, and esters from plants that protect the plant from outside threats. I harken back to my days in biology. I remember being on Presque Isle in Erie and taking soil samples and harvesting plants and taking nature walks and talking about this very thing. I thought it was really cool. Whether it's bacteria, viruses, fungus, or even insects that might attack the plant, these volatile organic compounds that we now call essential oils actually help defeat the offending critter and keep the plant strong. We now use them for detoxification, both internally and externally, and they've been shown to prevent angiogenesis. That's pretty neat. This one here, frankincense, is great on your list of fighters. It's high in boswellic acid, or it's known as boswellia, and a lot of people use that as an anti-inflammatory. Again, controlling inflammation, controlling viruses, bacteria, molds, yeast, lowering your immune system burden. What can you do to increase your immunity? There was a study that showed that frankincense triggered an apoptotic effect, meaning death to cancer cells. And a unique property about cancer cells is they have the ability to escape this programmed cell death. So they keep multiplying, they metastasize, and breach tissue barriers and go through organs in your body. These oils are so small, they can cross the blood-brain barrier and reduce neural inflammation, major for people with cancers of the brain. Because steroids, in addition to surgery and chemotherapy and radiation, are one of the treatments to help keep down the inflammation in those with brain cancer, is using steroids. Pretty neat that we know there's something that God gave us, right? Frankincense, myrrh, sandalwood, those essential oils that can actually do that. So we have patients who apply that to the back of their neck right here, who take a drop or two under their tongue a few times a day to get into the body. Do you know that myrrh, another essential oil, detoxifies the liver and boosts a very important antioxidant called glutathione? If you remember earlier, I had a slide up there and that big complex pathway that gets me excited, and I mentioned glutathione. Glutathione helps get the junk out of your body to stay healthy. And you know that lemongrass is a rich source of citrol, which induces apoptosis. Now that's powerful stuff. Back to the Army, Navy, Air Force, these are guys that would be nice to have on your side. Okay, so out with the good stuff now, moving on to the bad stuff. What to say to avoid, all right? We told you about what to do. Now let's look about what not to do. We are what we eat and don't eliminate. I love that. We are what we eat and don't eliminate. So if we eat good stuff, we might grow strong muscles. We might have vibrant health. We might have a great immune system. We might have fantastic energy and strength, endurance, stamina. But what about what we don't eliminate? I used to tease and say when I talk a lot about digestive health and did stool tests and metabolic analysis tests looking for markers of an unhealthy gut, I said we are what we eat, digest, absorb, assimilate, and eliminate. That was it, right? Eat, digest, absorb, assimilate, and eliminate. All right. So the one big one we talked about here, I've already beat up on sugar enough. Let me revisit sugar one more time. We're most concerned again about the glycemic load and the glycemic index. So a little clinical pearl, practical thing, hint, when you're out shopping, look at the grams of sugar. Try to eliminate high fructose corn syrup from your diet. You know that minerals like chromium and vanadium can help dramatically with blood sugar. All right, so here it is. In my sights for a target, monosodium glutamate. It's actually a salt of glutamate, and that's a stimulating brain chemical that right now, as you out there are engaging and we're hearing and learning, we need it. It's involved in attention and focus, but what happens is our diet, under all these code names for MSG, right? We'll try a couple out. Hydrolyzed anything. For example, hydrolyzed protein. You might say, what is that? Autolyzed yeast extract. What is that? Soy protein, anything enzyme modified. Well, I thought enzymes are good for my health. You see how confusing that can be? And unfortunately, this is getting under our radar. This is another one of those blind spots. Because yes, I said cancer feeds on sugar, but this is a dirty little secret. That G part, glutamate, is one of the primary fuels for cancer. So what happens? There's an enzyme in your body to help protect you. It's called glutaminase, and it converts glutamine into glutamate. Unfortunately, not everyone can get out of that reaction, so they get stuck here, and you create inflammation. That's what we're trying to control. There's another take-home point: control inflammation at the cell level, right? To get well, fix the cell. If the cell's inflamed, almost like this little circle around here, that would be a cell, and the nutrients can't get in and the junk can't get out, you're stuck in a toxic kind of a matrix of cytoplasmic yuck, almost like that'd be a Mr. Yuck sticker up there saying toxic, don't come in. And by the way, we'll be talking more about diets. Vegetarian diets, juicing and detoxification is probably why one of the reasons they're so effective is because these are the foods that have a very low natural glutamate concentration, and they're very low in sugar. So we talk about juicing what? Kale, wheatgrass juice, parsley, beets for the liver, spinach, celery. When I was in chiropractic and acupuncture school about 15 years ago, I worked at a place called Wild Oats, and I was the deli juice bar clerk. And I used to stand behind her every day, and I was allowed 1 glass of free juice. And I'd ride my bike into work in the middle of the afternoon, and I couldn't wait to get my kind of, kick 'em juice. And I'd hit carrots and celery and wheatgrass juice and spirulina, and I could work the entire night and not even need or want food. My body started to crave that. You know the tricky thing here is, this is a chemical, monosodium glutamate, that tickles your brain receptors. And remember that old commercial, you can't just have one? That's what happens. You can't. You want to know if something that has MSG, if you're a person who doesn't get headaches from it, like many people, ask yourself, can you put it down? This is a flavor enhancer, okay, that tickles the glutamate receptors that keeps you wanting more. So why is it in your food? It's industry. It's manufacturing. They want you to keep wanting more. I actually craved. I couldn't wait to get to work. I went to school all day. I started at 5 in the morning at the gym, was in class only for 10 hours. I'd ride my bike to work. I needed that juice. I knew I needed that juice to get me going. I didn't know this exactly at that time, but something in my body said when I was pure and clean, like I said before, green and clean, I needed that. Okay, something else, certainly limit meat. But this is interesting. Countries that don't have beef have lower incidence of colorectal and pancreatic cancer. But one of the problems is that we know now that the beef-fed corn were pro-inflammatory. The beef that were grass-fed made meats rich in omega-3s, which are the polyunsaturated fatty acids that are healthy and don't create inflammation. So it's the war of needing to have more omega-3 in your diet versus omega-6, okay? Dairy, big problem. Do you realize that lactose intolerance is the norm? It always makes me laugh when someone says, let's check someone for lactose intolerance. We are not meant to eat the milk of other animals. These proteins stimulate our immune system and cause mucus and inflammation. For years I've told children, if they get an ear infection, I have their parents stop milk. The mucus, the inflammation. Cows are also given bovine growth hormone. So we don't want, especially in hormone-sensitive cancers, to be eating dairy products. There's a really neat book by Barbara Kingsolver called The Animal Vegetable Miracle. Check it out. It talks all about animal fats, and in general, you won't ever want to eat anything that ever walked, breathed, had a heartbeat ever again. Something else too, I'll talk about this, I thought it was really relevant. When it comes to breast cancer, big issue. Many cancers actually. The whole controversy about what stimulates as a xenoestrogen. And it's kind of like the Trojan horse strategy in a way. These chemicals, BPA, this bisphenol A compound, chemicals like phytoestrogens can cause some problems. And there's some big problems like Roundup. Roundup ready soy, corn, cotton, sugar beets, and alfalfa. Why? Do you realize that unfortunately this Roundup ready stuff causes major problems? There's chemicals in Roundup that do major damage. It's called glyphosate. Glyphosate has been declared by the World Health Organization as a likely carcinogen. And I'm intentionally speaking with directness here. Glyphosate has been declared by the World Health Organization as a likely carcinogen. You know another chemical, 2,4-D, which is one of the chemicals used in Agent Orange and linked to neurological dysfunction, can also be found in your food supply. And we all know what Agent Orange did to the brave men and women and soldiers who served and were exposed to that in the military. So what happens? These genetically modified foods, these chemicalized foods, the chemicals in our plastics, here's what happens. They destroy the healthy gut bacteria and they produce something called zonulin. So if I were to build a fortress or a block wall, the mortar would be like in your gut lining, which keeps things out that shouldn't be in. This punches holes in the mortar and the bricks and allows the chemicals to get through, causing leaky gut. Leaky gut's another source of inflammation and allows bacteria and chemicals and toxins to now go into your bloodstream that now triggers all sorts of health problems, including autoimmune diseases. Do you know too that herbicides also impair a set of liver enzymes called CYPD? So your liver has to detoxify out of you. Your gut should be clean, but if you keep putting back in, remember I said before, we are what we eat and don't eliminate. So we have to eliminate toxins, right? I thought this was pretty obvious, but I thought I'd mention it. I summed it up this way. Conquering cancer, recognizing and facing the consequences of your choices. And I went pretty extreme here by showing a cigarette, certainly a cause of cancer. I have that here as one of my sayings. I always call them cancer sticks. And I call French fries cholesterol sticks as a joke. But these cancer sticks are obviously a cancer trigger for all sorts of cancers. I thought this was pretty obvious, but here's the deal. I think we all know, I call it grandma nutrition. I think we all know, to move back a slide, or two, that certain things aren't good for us. You know about eating whole nutrition and fruits and vegetables. So what is the barrier that gets in your way? And I thought tonight, if I could show you the consequences of your choices of food and lifestyle, you might be motivated to change. And that's the ultimate goal. The ultimate goal, what I would expose, reveal, educate, and hopefully eradicate this thing we call cancer by helping you recognize and face the consequence of your choices. Remember the old thing, knowledge is power? I said, what is power? Power is victory, right? Well, I thought it would be helpful if you knew on the science level that what you're putting into your body could cause this disease and illnesses and autoimmune diseases, you might now be empowered and educated to move on. How do I help people? That's an acupuncture needle right there. As I mentioned, I'm a medical acupuncturist. I actually treat the body and ear points for people who smoke. So I'll never condemn you, never look down on you, never blame you. Circumstances in life, if you would dissect that, often explain people's behaviors. Maybe they overeat and glucose load because it helps burst serotonin because they're depressed. That's certainly something very legit. Turn to prayer, meditation, faith, ways of working through it. But as a medical acupuncturist, it's a nice way to help deal with stress, and it's also helpful for that. So again, the concept of this, if I could help you understand the consequences of your dietary choices, lifestyle choices, exercise, prayer, meditation, eliminating stress, those factors, thought it'd be something to consider. Okay. So I know this is easier said than done. Remember the old saying, chillax or chill out, right? When I was in school, everyone used to say that, right? Chill out. Don't worry about it, man. I got it, right? Stress-free living, lowering inflammation. This is actually what it's about. There's some interesting researchers right now that are looking at the primary cause of many cancers as being this causing this. It's interesting, when I was in chiropractic and acupuncture school, I worked in a nursing home. And there would be people there, and they'd be in their 90s, some over 100, and I couldn't wait to ask them, what's your secret? I wanted to know what the magic pill was. You know, was it curcumin? Was it resveratrol? You know, were they running a certain pattern and exercising, doing plyometrics or something? And a lot of the patterns that you picked up on were the people who appeared to be, not all of them, but kind of chillax, kind of low key. And I went, wow. And right now, we can't understate that enough. Stress, okay? So let me tell you this. In the Department of the Psychology at the University of Berkeley, in an article entitled The Emotional Expression in the Onset and Progression of Cancer demonstrates the impact of psychological, social, and emotional stress. What does it do, right? You need to know. Stress really diminishes the immune system because it increases cortisol, which suppresses your immune system, depletes your melatonin, and we use melatonin, by the way, for a lot of people who can't sleep when they have issues with cancer. It's also a powerful antioxidant. It depletes your vitamin C, niacin, and many other micronutrients. Isn't that really neat? So I thought when you look at one of the components, keep it simple, right? That old thing, keep it simple, silly. All right, think of daily actions, restful sleep, that's why I mentioned melatonin, peace of mind, and sometimes that takes a lot for people to get to, be it counseling, prayer, faith. All right, so in summary, avoid sugar, GMOs, MSG, and some of the foods I mentioned. And don't forget about physical activity. Get out, right? At least 30 minutes per day. For example, vigorous walking. There's a lot of neat studies that show that too. We all know that. It's kind of, again, grandma kind of common sense, but get out. Studies actually show physical activity, even for patients dealing with cancer, is important. All right? So a couple of things here just in closing. A lot of these people end up having problems with loss of appetite, constipation, diarrhea, depression. So I'll tap on it just 1 second. Depression is so common, and I personally think, and that's what I'm going to tie in right here, okay, I think it's the largest barrier in doing anything proactive. Whether you're on the side of doing chemotherapy, radiation, surgery, naturals, detox, you know, those type of therapies, I think once the person hears cancer, back to my very beginning slide there, when they hear cancer, you think it's, what did I say? A death sentence. And I say the big D for depression. If you go into a funk of depression, I personally think you now have just hit the largest barrier in overcoming anything. Even if I put on your table essential oils and fresh juice every day, and we detoxify you, you're having mindful prayer, meditation, you're exercising, you go in infrared sauna. I could lay all that in front of you. If you're depressed, you probably hit that big barrier. So join support groups. Get out, interact. Support groups are great for those dealing with cancer. A lot of other symptoms: sore mouth, chemo brain, what I have said chemical concussion, crossword puzzles, reading, social engagement. Keep that line of communication going with loved ones, church, family, friends. Don't shut off. Don't shut off. Something else you can do too, I thought this was kind of neat. I actually met this doctor years ago, Dr. Stephen Sinatra. He's a medical doctor, cardiologist. He says, get connected to the world we live in by getting grounded. Sounds simple. Take off your shoes, go out, make your feet contact the earth. I treat a lot of Amish people. You know what's interesting? When I pull in the mornings and it's early in the morning, they're out there in the soil, right? We talk about the soil of your body. They're working the soil. But you know they're grounding, they're earthing, it's called, right? When I leave in the day, after supper, they're often going back and out the last minute things tending, and they're on the soil. They're walking on it. They're using their hands in it. They're out in the garden. They're out in the pasture. Really interesting. Okay. And summary here too. Juice and eat the rainbow. Eat the rainbow is a neat, quick concept to take with you today. It's a clinical pearl. In summary, eat wholesome, non-GMO, alkalizing foods that are free of MSG, antioxidants, anti-inflammatories in the nutrition can promote detoxification. Remember, the body is connected by this interstitial tissue called the matrix, if you will, and this is where the nutrients are, and they can enter the cell, like I said here, and they have to be pumped out. Something else that often happens too with patients, I call this pathways to healing, is pain. People have surgery. They're cut open. Maybe a tumor is pressing against an area of the body that becomes painful. Pain. As I mentioned a few times, I'm a medical acupuncturist. Acupuncture does a lot of things, but we use it in integrative oncology, right? I'm not saying the acupuncture is treating the cancer. It's great for the depression and the pain associated with cancer. And I always tease and say, acupuncture is your daily cup of tea. It balances your energy. What else? As a licensed chiropractor, I have to bring this to your attention. I've talked so much about the immune system, right? The immune system, I said that. You know, what you are reflective of what you eat. But I'll ask the question to many of my patients, what runs the immune system? This chart right here shows how your brain and spinal cord, your central nervous system, runs all of your organs and glands. And we don't think about it. Oh, I got a headache, got to see the chiropractor. Oh, my back hurts, got to see the chiropractor. Oh, my shoulder's out. But if you have blockages in your spine where the joints aren't moving, you can have an area of deadness in your spine. There's no life coming to your organs. So remember this, the chiropractic connection is that it runs your immune system. And I've talked many times tonight about keeping your immune system strong. In closing, we all choose to have our decisions about what we're going to eat, how we're going to live our life, how we're going to conduct ourselves. And I put mine here. So while I certainly don't have all the answers, I desire to educate and offer you thoughts on natural cancer support. And I wish you and your family a life free from the ravages and devastating effects of cancer. And offer you health, and hope. Thank you all for tuning in, and thank you for those out there in Cyberland there on the podcast. We also invite your questions at this point, and I'll also turn to questions here in the audience. We'd like to now turn it over, but also again we want to thank everyone who helped me produce this, and everyone who I've encountered who are warriors that have inspired me dealing and fighting and facing cancer, and that's why I bring this to you today. So thank you. Any questions here in this audience or comments on it? Yes.
I have a question about the water.
Yes.
Is spring water from a spring good?
It certainly can be good. We always have a saying, and I'll show you 2 cases here of about the beverages. When it comes to water, I say anything but the tap.
Okay.
And when it comes to a juicer, which I recommend you have as another way of getting hydration, we say the best juicer you have is the one you use, right? So spring water, yes, is acceptable as long as you know the source.
Well, you showed that bottle, the bottles.
Yes.
Were those the okay kind, or the glass bottles not good?
I was comparing, glass bottles are great.
That's
it's the
what I
ones
thought, 'cause
with
that
the
kinda threw me off.
BPA.
Okay, so the ones to the right were no good.
That's
The
right,
ones
it's
to
a
the
great
left.
point. And baby bottles have that stuff, and thankfully now you can see a lot of them advertise that.
Okay.
There's a certain line of baby bottles that is a real extra kind of a cutting edge years ago that mentioned that, but certainly we know that these, along with flame retardants and chemicals and pesticides, do a number on the immune system.
Okay, I have another question if no one else does.
Sure.
The frankincense,
Mm-hmm.
can you put that anywhere on your body if you mix it with like coconut oil?
Yeah, you can. That's a great point. Essential oils, as I mentioned, are very popular now and for a good reason. They should, though, when you apply them topically, be combined with a carrier oil. Almond oil, coconut oil, those oils are helpful to get the best absorption.
And you could put them under your tongue and there's no side effect to that?
There are certainly oils that you can put under your tongue.
Okay.
Peppermint's a great one, for example.
Awesome.
Ginger's a great one, for example.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Very good.
You mentioned sugar beets. Was that a pro or a con?
Yeah.
They're one of the 6 most foods that are linked to being genetically modified. Yeah. GMO foods are a big deal. I should actually give more on that. As much as I beat up sugar, I need to beat up GMO foods too. They actually...
Okay, sugar beets, is that just regular beets that you, is that a different kind of beet?
Well, if you ever see like cane sugar or sugar, when you're reading the ingredients, it'll often be there. That is one of the food sources that is almost always a GMO food, a genetically modified food. Meaning that that food was made with an altered, kind of a chopped up form of a bacterium that went into that plant. They modified it genetically, but now that keeps away the damaging effect of the pesticide and herbicide. So what that means is that plant now can grow. You can spray it with an herbicide. I don't know if anyone knows, there's a farm in the South Hills. It's called Trax Farm. I used to work there. I spent 3 summers working at Trax Farm in the South Hills of Pittsburgh. I was actually used to pick crops. And they did it the right way, the nice way. But I know many farms, to not have insects and bugs and fungi and bacteria kill plants, they use GMO crops so that you can spray chemicals on them and they don't die from the consequence of the chemicals. I remember picking strawberries on my hands and knees as I was earthing and actually looking at the devastation of how the insects would beat up the plants when you're left to grow in nature.
Well, I was using regular organic beets.
That's excellent.
That's different.
They're great for your liver. It's corn, soy, sugar beets. We know cotton, and you'll see cottonseed oil. So those are the big ones we try to avoid because of the GMOs.
So fresh beets, they're okay, don't get them in.
When I used to work at Wild Oats and I was the juice clerk, that was one of our big things. We'd take the fresh leaves and the beets and put it right in that juicer. We'd use carrots, beets, celery, parsley, spinach, apple for a little bit of flavor. And apple has the ellagic acid, and apple has quercetin, a great antihistaminic, and quercetin has some great effects here as we talk about cancer research. And we put in chlorophyll and wheatgrass juice, so beets definitely. And thank you for that question. I would not want to leave with confusion about that issue. Juice away.
Where do you get wheatgrass juice?
It's really interesting. Somebody here in the audience says that he got a connection. that guy knows someone, huh? They used to come when I worked at the store on a big flat.
Where do you get it?
I get the powder.
Right.
Bimmergy is the best one.
You
Right.
can buy fresh wheatgrass. Like China Eagle has it, the one in Cranberry has it, Whole Foods has it. Like it looks like grass.
That's
out
right.
of your yard. It's about this long, and it'll come in a package, and it's grass. But you have to have a special press a regular juicer won't do it. It has to be a special.
Yes,
press.
exactly. It was called a worm gear press, and it was a big piece of equipment that we would only run wheatgrass through. And I'd go back in the refrigerator, and I'd take this big tray out, and I would take scissors, almost like if you held your hair up and just decided to cut, or the old, before they came out with the weed whackers, like you went along with those little clippers in your lawn and cut that way. You'd cut it off, okay, and you'd spiral it up, put it in the grinder, and you would juice wheatgrass juice. And then at neat, it would take the bed back and it would grow again, but then the people would come and pick it up. So you can grow your own wheatgrass juice. And juicing is just wonderful. As I mentioned, it's low in glutamate, it's low in sugar, so juicing is a great way to take the burden off your body. But if you're going to juice, obviously organic, because you want to concentrate pesticide on that. You know, the big bags of carrots and things. And a little side story, when I worked there, we had this couple come in, and they owned horses. And about once every week they'd come in, and all of the fiber and the pulp that would come out of the juice extractor, we'd save it for them. They were a great customer of the store, and people who knew them used to come in and say, they have the healthiest horses, you should see their mane. They said they're the most robust horses, and they said, we found out you're feeding them the organic pulp and fiber from carrots and apples and beet and spinach and parsley, and that's what these horses were fed. And I can tell you, many of the customers who knew them, they were pretty well known in the St. Louis area, actually commented on how great the horses looked. You are what you eat.
We went to see a doctor who gave a talk, and part of the thing was on the difference between organic, and he went into gross detail on the difference between organic vegetables or organic whatever.
As I mentioned before, the study came out, okay, when I did sort of a meta-analysis test, and they said, geez, we looked at all those journals. No, there's no difference. They looked at carbohydrates, protein, and fat. They did not look at antioxidants. They did not look at trace minerals. So yes, they might be the same chemical composition in terms of carbs, protein, fat, what they call macronutrients. I think we need to stay alive. But I say, I just don't want to be normal. I want to be optimal. And if I want to be optimal in my health, or my word, if I'm facing cancer, I want to do everything to build my army. And to build that army, I would not be eating loads of pesticides and herbicides. Knowing they can kill your gut bacteria, breach the gut barrier, and so many cancers, not just gastrointestinal cancers now, not colorectal cancers, are linked to the gut. We're going to learn more and more in the next decade about the human microbiome in the gut and what it means to health. Thyroid health, the health of the cells to fight cancer, your health in terms of having vibrant energy. Remember, those healthy bacteria make vitamin B12, something we often do and supplement in patients with cancer, vitamin B12. They help you make vitamin K to absorb the all-essential vitamin D for immune system. These gut bacteria helps kind of digest your foods. A lot of cancer patients I put on pancreatic enzymes. They need to take the burden off the organ called the pancreas. So there's so much in this gut microbiome that we do know, and we can test for it. We use an organic acid test, a stool test, a breathalyzer test, looking for something called small intestinal bacterial overgrowth that's extremely helpful in looking at the gastric cancers, because we know they are linked to a bacterium called Helicobacter pylori. So H. pylori is linked and is a known carcinogen. It's a bacterium. That seems really evil, doesn't it? You can get a bacterium that causes cancer. That just seems crude. That seems rude, but it's factual.
This last word is so critical, hope, because your oncologists, they give you surgery, they give you radiation, they give you chemo, and they deplete and destroy your whole immune system. And you can tell, I mean, you see the signs. Your nails are a mess, your hair's gone, your, you know your immune system's completely shot. And the only thing they don't give you is hope. It's like, wait to see where it's going to come ravishing someplace else, because they don't tell you about the important part, like start on a plant-based, start working on rebuilding yourself.
Great point. A couple things to that. Chemotherapy targets the most rapidly dividing cells, called mitosis, right? The cells in your body that replicate, use a process called mitosis and another one called meiosis that's saved for reproduction. Mitosis in a cancer cell is going rapid, it's wild, it's breaching, it's reproducing. That's why the sugar is being fed, fueling that fire, almost like with a bellows pump fueling the fire. Okay? The hair cells are rapidly growing. That's so often why you also get the hair loss. Chemo targets the rapidly dividing cells. In the wake of its destruction, and I could have went on more, I call it a chemical concussion. Being from Pittsburgh, I can't help to say that movie called Concussion talked about chronic traumatic encephalopathy from repetitive brain injury. The football players, after hitting their heads in helmets and have that concussion. But chemo can cause collateral damage. Their goal certainly is to minimize side effect of the surrounding tissue. They want to focus on the tumor, the cell, and minimize collateral damage. But hair loss is an example of that. So I'd say this, chemotherapy so often creates problems that are easily fixable, but perhaps to your point, under-recognized is what you can do. I mentioned there before diarrhea and bloating. Probiotics, digestive enzymes, change of diet. Eating foods with live active enzymes in it to take the burden off. What's frustrating oftentimes, the diet that a cancer patient gets is completely devoid of anything I just mentioned that's scientifically supported. You're not being told to eat enzyme-rich, live active food that has antioxidant capacity and rich in vitamin D. You're told you eat a balanced diet or a healthy diet, or maybe you have to gain weight because cancer has something called cachexia. And cachexia is the rapid protein degradation or the wasting away of your body in the face of cancer because the cancer cells are kind of eating so quickly. So something that's disheartening is you're often given sugar, you're often given soy protein, you're often given unhealthy fats, and you're told to get well under probably the most trying time in your body's entire immune system ever. Is a challenge. You're told to get well by eating foods that do not promote wellness. So we kind of have a food industry that is looking more toward profit, and we have a healthcare industry that's looking toward food, but we're just not in sync yet. So it is disheartening to see the diets of a cancer patient, especially those wasting away, they're told to bulk up, gain weight. And I've said before, I'm an athletic trainer. I used to work as an athletic trainer. I worked at a school called Upper St. Clair High School in the South Hills of Pittsburgh. And those kids wanted to gain weight, right? They're in 10th grade and 11th, and they want to go play college ball maybe. Maybe it's okay at that point in your life to bulk up a little bit and have some extra sugar. And I don't even argue against that right now. But having said that, we're telling people to bulk up. We're not turning toward fibrous, rich food, antioxidant food, food with enzymes. So this is hopefully why this talk today has informed people, it exposed, it educated, and can empower you to make the choices that can promote a healthy lifestyle, because many people will face this. I don't know if you know the stat. Right now, 1 in 2 men and 1 in 3 women living today will face a diagnosis of cancer. So I want, to be empowered and educated. No matter what choice you make, if you go through with chemotherapy, surgery, radiation, you want to do something to help, because depression hits, fatigue hits, pain hits, and you need, as you're saying, hope. And I totally agree. This has been our tagline for years. But the hope when it comes to cancer, you cannot give up. As I mentioned, support groups, faith, friends, church. You have to. So it's so important that cannot be understated, and it cannot be overemphasized in how you can't give up on hope. Anyone else with a question?
Another question.
Sure.
You said keep your body alkaline.
Yes.
Now, doing all that, does that keep your body alkaline? What is, is that, I don't totally understand
Yeah,
how we go
typically
about
does.
doing all that does that.
It typically does, yes.
Okay.
What will happen is the environment in which cancer lives is typically one without oxygen, so it becomes acidic.
Okay.
You think of carbon dioxide, okay? I used to be an emergency medical technician. We gave a lot of...
You've been everywhere.
Yeah.
Are you sure you're as old as you
Yeah.
He's 60, didn't you know?
I know, I was gonna say, my goodness.
I turned 21 yesterday. I was like a Doogie Howser or something.
It was just there.
Oxygen is very helpful for people, but carbon dioxide
Right.
is an acidic gas, right? So I harken back on those days, even oxygen. So we know that cancer does not do well in an oxygen-rich environment. Exactly.
Yeah.
And that's why you need the matrix to be alkaline, because just like in the dentition,
Right.
when the pH is right, the chemistry is right,
Right.
and the cell matrix and the cell membrane now has the right voltage to allow chemicals, oxygen to come in, magnesium and potassium. Magnesium is so important. It's involved in over 300 reactions, many of which are in the liver. So important to supplement. Consider B12 and magnesium, and some of the cancer patients need iron and other nutrients and zinc for the immune system. But you need that membrane to be in the right environment, and we're not talking about enough. So it's a voltage
So the
issue.
diet, all that can make your body alkaline.
Yeah.
To help keep that.
The body's kind of like a big battery when you think about
Yeah.
it. It's like a battery. It's electrochemical.
Right.
Okay? So alkaline diet, and there's pH strips that we have that you can test your saliva and test your urine and determine where you are. It's a neat look at cancer, and it's thinking on the very microscopic level. Yes.
You said cancer cells definitely feed off the sugar. What about the average person who craves sugar, craves carbohydrates? Are they, would you say they're there, or the tray is there, or they just haven't, or they can still detoxify, but they're not forming tumors, but actually that tray is there? That's what I'm kind of...
All right, a moment of confession. 20 years ago, I was a self-confessed addict for sugar. What do you call a carboholic?
You?
I used to crave it, and I used to tease and say, if you told me there was a bowl of ice cream and a candy bar beyond that door and it was locked, I would find a way to run through it. I was no different than an addict craving alcohol. My poison was just kind of innocent and benign. I did my damage and committed my sins, if you will, in the grocery store, in the pizza shop, at the local fast food restaurant. Pizza, cheeseburgers, ice cream, cake, cookies, donuts, candies. I was an addict. So what I found out is this whole issue with sugar dysregulation has interesting deep roots, and we should look at this. I mentioned before about mind-body connection. I initially started to overeat to gain weight. Look at me, it's no secret, I'm thin, right? An ectomorphic body build. I created a condition inside my body called yeast, which is a chink in my armor that can now invite diseases. Okay? To stop that, I had to detoxify, get rid of yeast, and women out there would appreciate this. I often said when you're single, eat for you, 1. If you're pregnant, eat for 2. If you have twins, eat for 3. If you have yeast and you have bad bacteria, or if you have molds in your body, right? The people who walk in the basement and they get congested, they walk out in their garage and they sneeze, their eyes are red, they open an old textbook and they feel irritated and congested and blown up in their sinuses. For those people, mold toxicity is real. You will crave carbohydrates. You will crave carbohydrates, therefore, because ghrelin and leptin, hormones in your tummy, don't signal back to your head. You will crave carbohydrates when you have low serotonin, because carbohydrates and the carbonic acid, the carbonation in soda, why so many people crave Coke, will actually cause problems and imbalance in serotonin. Other reasons for this too, you can be low in vitamins. I mentioned before chromium, vanadium, B complex. That's why chromium is actually called, in one of its forms, glucose tolerance factor. So we know that this whole thing called dysinsulinemia is very bad. I mentioned before Dr. Joseph Mercola, many of you people know him. We're talking about how to regulate the rapid swings in blood sugar. So loading sugar at one meal increases your blood sugar, right? You can take a finger test strip and test that. It follows by insulin, and insulin shoves sugar into your cell. Remember how immediately you're thinking to yourself, I'm going to eat this. It's almost devilish. You're thinking, I'm going to eat this. In a few minutes, a few hours, I'm going to feel like garbage. I'm going to be bonked out. I'm going to have brain fog. I'm going to feel moody. I'm going to be crabby. I'll be bloated. I'll be gassing. I won't be able to move my bowels right tomorrow, but I'm going to jump in and do it. It's that moment where I mentioned before about addressing the psychological causes. So if you can start to control that, identify emotional factors, have a healthy relationship with food, and understand that you kind of have to have this loving relationship with food, not to see it as your enemy, and to have a healthy balance. So if you're looking for one cheat food that I may offer tonight, it would be chocolate. Full of antioxidants. I didn't mention that here because it's also full of milk and sugar. But dark chocolate is extremely rich in antioxidants. So if you're going through cancer, and you're a person, and you're real, and we have real life cravings and emotions and depression and fatigue, dark chocolate made the right way, without the excess sugar, is actually extremely rich in antioxidants. So what I would say when it comes to you and sugar modulation, consider some of those factors, be it infections. Some people have poor adrenal function, where a hormone called the glucocorticoids are all out of whack. Some people are deficient in minerals. Some have low vitamin D. Some are dealing with depression. They're self-medicating to increase their serotonin. But in other cases, we want to control this because we're trying to identify and lower risk factors for diseases of autoimmune type, and we know sugar is inflammatory. So another way to put sugar up there would be to have a big fire there.
Another question.
Did that answer your question?
Yeah, I just remember telling you what went down to the Carolinas, he had a race, and my friends had these twins, they were 10 years old, and they were just, the sweetest fish, they were just ratting, it was going within seconds. I thought, wow, like you're identifying with the food, and they're blindly just, this is what I want to eat. And
Right.
The bag was gone. It's like,
They say that sugar stimulates the same receptors that cocaine stimulates. So that's powerful.
yeah.
How about
Yes.
sugar in fruit and wine, things like that?
Great question. We know when it comes to resveratrol,
Right.
that very potent antioxidant, we'd rather you get it from grapes. Okay? Wine, though, is something that we'd say does have its benefit, but it's still the alcoholic component has to be processed by the liver. So there are some studies out there that I think somewhere between the tune of 1 and 2 glasses a week for someone with cancer is an acceptable allowance. And we'd have to actually ask ourselves, out of that, in terms of the fruit category, what are you getting? So when you eat the whole fruit, it's complexed with carbohydrate and fiber, which slows that glycemic index down, that big ramp. If you plot this out in terms of time on this axis down here, and glucose up here, your metabolic glucose might be between 75 and say 99. It rests on a normal day when it's right. But if all of a sudden you take a big whopping dose of juice, fruit juice, even natural fruit juice, orange juice, apple juice, cranberry juice. Children, as you mentioned, are really known to do that, right? Apple juice is so common with children, grape juice for children, orange juice in the morning with children. But this is why so many kids go off to school and they feel crappy in just a few hours because their blood sugar goes up, it plummets, insulin comes out, it further pushes blood sugar down. To get it back up, a hormone called cortisol comes out, and cortisol is your stress hormone, coming from your adrenal glands atop your kidneys. So yes, sugar does major problems and major damage. So we can say when you eat the fruit in its pure source, ideally organic, complex with phytonutrients, complex with antioxidants, is anti-inflammatory, it has a lower glycemic index, and that's certainly acceptable. We want those on our team. So what are the best fruits typically? Blueberries, black raspberries, red raspberries, strawberries, And I'll expand a little bit. Avocados, something great if you're trying to gain weight, right? Avocados, so extremely helpful. So some of these fruits that we know out there are major in terms of antioxidants, and so are red grapes. Yeah, not the green grapes necessarily. The red grapes have that antioxidant.
What about no bananas then? Those are too.
Well, bananas have great source of potassium. What I often recommend, and they're part of the BRAC diet. So if a patient with cancer is having diarrhea, absolutely. In fact, they use banana flakes in the hospital setting to actually help with the diarrhea patients. So that's part of it. And potassium, another great source of potassium though, which is needed for the cell. If for a minute we could just hallucinate and this would become a cell. This has been my cell all night. Potassium is extremely important in that interchange. So they're a great source of potassium, but so are kiwi. More water, please. Yeah, so extremely important. Any questions that have come in?
Not so far, no.
Any other questions about anything stated there, or some of the science and research?
I know you sell all the vitamins and that type of supplement, but do you sell the pH strips and the essential oils too?
Thank you. Yes, that's a great question. We do. This entire seminar, the education, I did mention herbs. I mentioned essential oils. I mentioned pH strips here just a little bit ago, and we do. I sell hundreds of products, and I do not pay any homage or favoritism to any one brand or allegiance. I would like to think that I've selectively cherry-picked from many companies to find out the best herbs and the quality. For example, a very controversial remedy in the natural world of cancer treatment is something called Essiac Tea, right? Rna Casey from Canada had a clinic. Do you know that that's sold in supplement form, and we carry it here at the clinic, called Burdock Complex? We sell another product that is a beautiful blend of something called Scutellaria bicalensis, turmeric, bioperine. It's a neat little product called Inflam. It has many other herbs in it, like boswellia. I mentioned before, boswellic acid. We carry pH strips to help monitor. We carry essential oils to be used, like sandalwood, myrrh, frankincense. They're all part of our arsenal. Or perhaps to your point there, I like that, giving you additional options or hope when you're left feeling tired or ill, you have to recover from surgery or malnourished. These supplements are just that. They supplement an otherwise healthy diet. So thank you for bringing that up. But the supplements are something that is a major part of our arsenal in fighting and helping to promote the immune system. That's a very broad topic. Are there any other questions on specific supplements? Many of you may not have known that you can buy Essiac Tea, and it's also in pill form.
But when you buy that, you have to, they don't have actual bags for that. You have to actually make it or something.
It's a little,
It's a process.
yeah.
Yeah.
Health food stores usually sell that, but that's why it's so nice we have it in pill form.
You do
Actually,
have it.
yep.
Is that a new product?
No,
you've
no.
had it?
No, I've had that for a long time. So simple things like vitamin D3. People walk in a health food store. There might be shelves of vitamin D. Which one? How do I know? The one I use, it's combined with olive oil, and it's combined with vitamin K2 for proper absorption. The other ones I use are combined with rosemary for better uptake and liver detoxification. So there's a very neat science to this that I'd like to think I've spent my career attempting to select only the most optimal herbs and use the high quality nutrition from the diet, first of all, right? Hippocrates, I put that quote up many times, let food be your medicine and medicine be your food. But when it comes to supplements, they are such an important part. I'll reflect on a case we worked with over the past year of a gentleman with gastric cancer. Some major things in overcoming the process because there was surgery involved, extensive. Was on a feeding tube for a long time and getting nutrition in other ways too, and what they call PICC line. We would add certain nutrients and probiotics, digestive enzymes, essential oils, and powders. I'm a firm believer for the people dealing with gastric, colorectal cancers, put things in powder form. So oftentimes they have low stomach hydrochloric acid, they have pancreatic enzyme impairment, they have digestive maladies with not enough bacteria, so we use powder forms of nutrients. We use all sorts of antioxidants, protein powders that are free of glutamate, free of the chemicals. They're free of binders and fillers and MSG and dyes and colorings that help your body. So we'd blend cocktails full of compounds in there like curcumin, like resveratrol, quercetin, the red berry extract, something called OPC3s, right? These chemicals are rich in these fruits, but oftentimes with low appetite, nausea and gastric pain and abdominal discomfort, bloating and digestion, powders are the way to go. We really cater to liquids and powders. And something else that should be said is RNA therapy. I briefly mentioned it, but we use DNA testing to look at your genome like I showed you there on that one picture. There's some really neat tests out there now using the saliva and blood to look at your whole genome, markers like MTHFR for the proper folic acid metabolism, vitamin D markers, and then what we do through that is select these nutritionals. But we use RNA therapy. If I could for just a minute, go back to that and show you one of the most cutting edge, most exciting fields of medicine right now is in this little part here. It's like being a puppeteer and being able to work with this. You know what I just thought? Let's detox a minute, reminding. Pretty scene, weather, fall, okay, that time of year. Of course, this is a beautiful scene right when the leaves are changing, just perfect. Okay, so let me go right there. Okay, so this is it. These are the markers that make personalized nutrition alive and well today. This is a real thing that we do at the office at Innovative Family Wellness. So what we do is look at these markers, run supporting biochemical tests, and find out, do we need to treat your body with ribonucleic acid therapy? Biotech is using it to engineer drugs. We're using it in supplement forms. It's extracts of yeast cleaved at specific segments along the strand of amino acids. When we would look at these things called allelic variations and gene markers, we'll take the common one right in the middle there, MTHFR, methyl tetrahydrofolate. We actually have specific compounded forms to give your cell the RNA in the nucleus, in the central, back to my cell, in the central nucleus, right there's that little bird, we would be giving that the material to start to change the genetic expression of the cell. Remember I said about 5 to 10% of all cancers are hereditary, but all cancers are gene related because cancer comes in and hijacks this, and you have a rapidly dividing, growing cell that pays no mind to barriers or tissue called metastasis that breaches through, releases enzymes, changes the pH, and goes on destroy mode. Probably like analogous to probably how a Navy SEAL would just come with precision, get it done. Over here is where all the fun happens, okay? We do the gene testing like the backbone. It's like your hardware, the computer, and the software is the epigenetics, how to get around this. So epigenetics is that new cutting edge that I may find you have a blockage here in this pathway, but using RNA therapy, specific supplements, and customized diet, we can get around this. What was the example I gave before about broccoli and cruciferous vegetables? Relevant to breast cancer. BRCA, right? BRCA genes. We know from science that the BRCA genes are influenced in the right way by eating cruciferous vegetables. Broccoli, cauliflower, Brussels sprouts. Absolutely part of the diet. So this is where all of the excitement for me happens. In this, I do this unique genetic testing of the saliva or blood. We do supporting biochemistry testing of the stool, urine, blood, hair, whatever testing are appropriate. We write scripts from all the time. B12 markers, vitamin D markers, mineral assessment levels. We look at the microbiome of the gut, but this becomes the backbone. That's how you achieve personalized medicine using RNA therapy with DNA testing. And this modulates the expression of cancer.
What's the first step to diagnose a patient for that cycle, for that?
A gene test of the saliva or blood. And all these little things called SNPs, single nucleotide polymorphisms, are made easy. Look, I used to work on the railroad, okay? This is no joke. And I used to work on the railroad, honestly. My father, when I was in college, got me a job on the Union Railroad. It's right near Kennywood Park, if anyone out there is listening. And I used to be a gandy dancer. And I'd swing the spike, and there were tracks, okay? There was a northbound and a southbound, all right? But in railroad land, they can switch over and run on different tracks if need be. These gene SNPs, because you can't pick your parents, I always say, you could have one track out. Maybe we're welding on that track. We have a piece of track lifted up. We're working on that piece of track right now. But if you can use that other lane, you can still get around it. So when I test, let's say, for MTHFR, there's a sequence we look at that controls an inflammatory chemical called homocysteine. You might find out one parent gave you that copy and one didn't. Analogous to one track being blocked and one being open. So the good news is you can still make 5-methyl tetrahydrofolate from the folic acid that you take when you eat green leafy vegetables. But what if both parents gave you that copy? Block, block. So I got the northbound track, I got the southbound track, but tracks out. Big accident, derailment, coal spilled everywhere. We're stuck, not going anywhere. Blocked. Now I can't do this. I can't make this connection into B12. I can't make this connection to make me happy, to pump up my tetrabiopterin, to make my serotonin, to make my dopamine. So I get in kids, ADD, ADHD. I get in adults and children and teens, depression. I get over here, inappropriate methylation of the gene, and this is DNA, RNA, protein, and lipids is what methylation does. So if this is my little cell again over here, and I'm supposed to, on the cell surface, make proteins and lipids, because this is a membrane, remember regulating the stuff in and out, and I'm supposed to do something in the DNA and the RNA, which is down here in the little cell, and the organelle called the nucleus. Now I'm stuck. Now that's a recipe on a genetic basis for cancer. And I'm not saying this is the BRCA gene. It's not. Okay? These aren't the genes that you typically hear about. But the epigenetics modifies, turns on and turns off switches. Just like I'd go and get off the caboose and throw a switch, track's open now, throw the switch back, I can turn on and off switches with this piece of information using supporting biochemistry testing, and now I've got something. Now I feel that 5 to 10 years from now, remember I said before about truths that initially when you hear something you kind of, no way, you don't accept it, and then eventually you become self-evident, and sort of, oh, you accept it as being self-evident. I think we're getting there. In 5 years, we're going to say, of course we need to look at our genome, because this is the essence of personalized medicine. A one-size-fits-all program does not work, right? So there's some people, for example, that need more protein when they're going through a cancer diet. Maybe they're very malnourished. Maybe they're very underweight. Maybe they have the cachexia of cancer and they need more protein. Maybe some people need to do more juicing based on a blood type or based on where their problem is. But this is one of the things that helps personalize what we do for many conditions. I feel the need for a happy slap. Fishing. Being out in nature. This was always the weekend that I used to go there too. Right now, this was always the weekend. Right. This was the weekend we used to go. There's something called steelhead trout that used to be salmon in there, but now there's steelhead trout up in here. Pretty fun. That's where I went to school. Actually, when this is funny, when I was applying for school, I wanted to work on the railroad like my dad. And my mom said, no, you have to do this essay for Penn State. There's this question here you have to answer. It says, why do you want to attend our school? And I literally wrote, because it's close to fishing. My mom said, that won't fly. You have to write about something really intense about your education in the world of academia. I said, but Mom, that's why I want to go to that school, because I want to fish on the weekends. And it was great because it was right in the heart there where I could do the ecology studies and look at the, how the waters interact with the shores and how the birds and migratory patterns. So believe it or not, I realize now that God led me a neat path to understand the macrobios, to now get more on the kind of, get my cell, if you hallucinate, that's my cell, on the microbios of the cell. But it started macro before it became micro. And that's very micro. But this time of year, that's a whole lot better to think about. They used to say, a bad day fishing is better than a good day of work. So, even if you get skunked, at least you're out, right? Any other questions? Would you like to ask a question that maybe somebody emailed in or texted in?
Not so far.
Okay. All right, if that's all the questions, I again thank you. Representing Innovative Family Wellness, I certainly thank everybody for tuning in and coming out today. And I wish you again health, and hope. Thank you.